second grade. So today we're going to learn a little bit about a couple of things with nonfiction. I'm playing with my hair, which is probably not a good idea, but I am super excited to show you a little bit more about what is interesting versus what is important. So these are our goals for the day. We're going to be able to decide what is important versus what is interesting, and then we're going to be able to read and select the most important sentence in a passage. So when an author sits down to write a nonfiction book, they have important facts that you cannot take out of the book, otherwise it would change the entire book. They also have things that are really interesting, things that make us want to keep reading, things that we think, oh, I never knew that. And sometimes those can be the same, but usually when we're reading, we can take out those interesting facts and still learn the new information that the author wants us to learn. So I brought a book called Bats. And I know it's about bats because it has a picture and because I'm using the nonfiction text feature, the word bats. It would be very weird if Elizabeth Carney said, oh, this book is about bats, but then if I opened it, it was about apples. It just would be very strange. Thankfully, I have flipped through this book, and she is not writing about apples. She is, in fact, writing about bats, and I can see that because of the pictures. So I chose this section. It's called Hanging Out, because I think the way that bats hang with their feet is really cool. I can't do that, so I think that's awesome. So I decided that I was going to read a little bit and show you my thinking about how I figure out what is important versus what is interesting. So this one says, when bats are not hunting for food, they're usually hiding in a roost. Roosts can be caves, treetops, or attics. Bats pick places that are well hidden and protect them from bad weather. When most bats rest in the roost, they hang upside down. Oh my goodness. I'm going to keep going. Have you ever hung upside down in a jungle gym? You might start to feel dizzy. Bats have special veins to keep their blood flowing properly so they never feel dizzy. Bats can't take off from the ground like birds do. They have to fall into flight. Hanging upside down is the best way to make a quick getaway. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting information. There's also a lot of important information in this. And so we're going to decide what we can take out that might be interesting, but this section stays the same. So it says, when bats are not hunting for food, they usually hide in roost. Roost can be caves, treetops, or attic. Okay, here's the thing. I think that when she defines the word roost, she could have bolded that word and then showed us in the glossary what a roost was. So I think that she can actually take this sentence out, roost can be caves, treetops, or attics, and maybe put that in the glossary for us, so that way she can actually save space and maybe tell us a little bit more about bats and why they hang upside down. Bats pick places that are well hidden and protect them from bad weather. Again, I don't think this is necessarily important. I think this is interesting because I think that this is interesting. And the reason why I think that this is interesting is because, I think I said that twice, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going. The reason why I think this is interesting is because later on in the book, she does talk about bad weather with bats and how sometimes baby bats can get knocked down because of bad weather. So I think that this is interesting, but I don't know that it's necessary to help support her idea about hanging out. Then when we get to the second page, I think there's so many important details in this page that she wrote. First of all, I think that this is really important. Bats have special veins to keep their blood flowing properly so they never feel dizzy. Whoa, especially because we know from earlier that bats use their ears and echolocation for how to find food and stuff. And with us, with humans, if we get an ear infection or something happens to our ears, it can throw off our balance. I think this is so cool that they have special veins to where they don't get dizzy if they hang upside down. And then this other part that I think is super important is bats can't take off from the ground like birds do. They have to fall in order to fly. I didn't know that. I think that's actually really important, especially for one of the reasons of why they hang upside down. We're going to talk more about this later, especially when we talk about main idea and details. But anyway, those are just a few ways that when I sit there, when I read, I can say, oh, you know what? I bet I could take this sentence out and it wouldn't change the main idea or the main point of what the author is trying to teach me. And this, I know because I'm using my text features, I know from the heading that she's talking about hanging out. She's talking about why bats hang upside down. First of all, this is interesting, but I don't think it's important. I don't think it's important for us to know in this section that roosts can be in caves, treetops, or attics. I don't think so. Your parents might disagree because it might be important for them to know that a roost can happen in an attic and they need to go look at that. I also don't know that it's necessarily important that we know that they pick places that protect them from the weather. At least not in this section. I think she could have written a whole separate section about weather and about how bats choose their places and about how they choose their roost, but maybe not in this section. Things that I think are important: the blood veins and the blood flow to keep them from getting dizzy, especially when they have to use their ears to find food and to hunt. I also think that it's important to know how they fly, and the reason why they hang upside down is because they have to fall from that branch or fall from whatever they're hanging onto by their feet, because they can't just leap off and fly. They actually have to fall into their flight, which makes me think of Toy Story when Buzz Lightyear said that he was not flying, he was falling with style. So just a little bit of a text to media connection for you there. That was a bonus. You're welcome, second grade. But anyway, that's how I find out what the most important details are, or what the most important things are in a nonfiction passage. Now, what you are going to do is you are going to look on Seesaw. There is a passage for you. You are going to highlight the most important sentence in that passage. It can be any sentence that you think is important. So I want you to really read and really think about why it's important, because tomorrow we're going to learn about the main idea and details. And what you're going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to look at that passage again, and the next time you're going to actually have to record why you think it is the most important passage. So for example, you're going to see something that looks like this. It's actually not this, it's about Rosa Parks, but I chose this one because I wanted to show you what you were going to do. And I'm just going to use this first page because this is actually 3 pages long. But this is all about Barack Obama, who is an American president. He was an American president, and he was before Donald Trump came. So I decided to print off an article about him. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to use one of my fancy markers. So I'm actually not doing this on Seesaw, but I'm going to show you what you are going to do on Seesaw. So I'm going to read it. The President of the United States has an important job. He or she is the leader of the armed forces. This person executes and enforces the United States law. The President is able to sign bills to become laws. He or she is able to veto or reject laws. In addition, the President works with the leaders of other countries. Meet Barack Obama. He was the 44th President of the United States. He was the first African American to become a U.S. President. Obama was elected in November 2008. In January 2009, he began his 4-year term as president. In November 2012, Obama was reelected for the 2nd term. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting information. I think that because of the title, Hello, Mr. Obama, I think that the most important sentence is these two. I think that the most important sentence is Meet Barack Obama. He was the 44th President of the United States. I think this tells us, first of all, who he is and what exactly he is famous for. He is famous for being the 44th President of the United States. It then goes on to tell us a little bit more about sorry, I think there was a bug that was freaky. But it goes on to tell us a little bit about how he was the first African American, when he was elected as president, when he started his presidency. But I think that the most important detail on this page, the most important fact, is that he was the 44th President of the United States. So now what you're going to do is you are going to go to Seesaw, you're going to look at the activity, you're going to read, and you're going to highlight what you think is the most important sentence. If you're right, if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what you think. Because, like I said, tomorrow you're going to have to defend your answer. Okay? All right, well, I will see you guys in a little bit.